Aboard a packed flight, the air is thick with tension. The plane hums in the sky, but for one passenger, it feels like the ground beneath him is crumbling. He's seated in the middle of a row, trying to ignore the sharp whispers that cut through, the murmur of the cabin. His skin is darker, his clothes neat but modest, and in the eyes of one particular passenger across the aisle, he's just another nobody. The insult comes suddenly, like a lightning strike. A cutting remark, loud, enough for everyone to hear. The passenger laughs. The others chuckle nervously. Some glance away, but all eyes are on him now, on his humiliation. But what they don't know is that this man, this nobody, holds a secret, a power that will shake this flight to its core. What happens next will leave them all speechless. The hum of the airplane is a constant backdrop, but for Jamal, it's the sound of a world closing in. He adjusts in his seat, trying to focus on the magazine in front of him, but the words blur. His mind races, caught in the tangled mess of thoughts that have followed him for years, the struggle to prove his worth, the fight against invisible barriers. Jamal isn't a stranger to prejudice. He's worked hard to get here, sat in boardrooms where his credentials were questioned, walked through doors where his presence was met with raised eyebrows. He's the only black man in the cabin, and though he's not looking for attention, he's aware of the stares that come his way. The flight attendants move briskly, their high heels clicking against the aisle as they glide past. Jamal watches them, and then his eyes flicker toward the man sitting across from him. Mark, a middle-aged white man in a tailored suit, his face half hidden behind a pair of designer sunglasses. Mark's eyes meet Jamal's for a moment before his lips curl into a smirk. Jamal looks away, pretending not to notice, but the tension in the air grows thicker. Mark leans over to his companion, whispering something, his voice barely audible but sharp enough to catch Jamal's attention. "Can't even tell if he's in the right place," Mark says, just loud enough for Jamal to hear. "Who lets people like that on flights like this?" Jamal's stomach tightens, but he swallows the hurt. It's not the first time he's been made to feel less than. It won't be the last. But today, something in him stirs, a quiet storm that's been building for years. Then the insult comes. Mark, emboldened by the comfortable silence of the plane, looks directly at Jamal. "Hey!" he calls out with a loud, mocking voice. "Are you sure you're on the right flight? This isn't the one for you." A ripple of laughter spreads across the cabin as some passengers glance nervously, unsure of how to react. Jamal's heart races, his hands gripping the armrests. But he doesn't respond. Not yet. He's learned that silence often speaks louder than words. The flight attendants glance over, their expressions frozen in place. The captain's voice crackles over the intercom, announcing they've reached cruising altitude, but Jamal can barely hear it. His thoughts are clouded by the hurt, by the shame that presses against him like a weight. But what Mark doesn't know is that Jamal is not who he thinks he is. And by the time this flight lands, Mark will understand just how wrong he was. The cockpit is silent. For a moment, it feels like time itself has paused, hanging in the air between Jamal and the captain. The hum of the plane, the soft clicks of the flight controls all fade into a distant background. Jamal stands tall, his presence commanding. The captain, unsure of how to react, sits frozen in his seat, still gripping the control panel. Jamal's heart beats steadily in his chest. He's not just here for himself. He's here for every moment of humiliation, every glance of disdain, every time his worth has been questioned. This is his moment, not just to prove he belongs here, but to show that his place in the world can't be defined by others. It never could be. "You don't understand," the captain finally says, his voice shaky, barely a whisper. This isn't how things work. You can't just take over like this." Jamal locks eyes with him, his voice calm yet unyielding. "You're right," he says softly. "But the world works differently now. I'm not just a passenger, I'm the one who decides the path. The captain opens his mouth again, but no words come out. Instead, his fingers tremble slightly on the controls as Jamal takes a slow step forward. The other flight attendants, who have been watching from the cockpit entrance, exchange glances, unsure of how to intervene. The tension in the air is so thick that it feels almost suffocating. And then the intercom crackles, breaking the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice comes through, shaky, unsteady. "We have a slight change in the flight plan. We'll be making an unscheduled stop. Please remain seated." Jamal walks around the cockpit, his eyes not leaving the captain's face. His mind is clear, his emotions focused. He's no longer the man who took the insults quietly, no longer the man who sat in the back, unseen, unheard. He's the man who will take control not just of this flight, but of everything. Outside the cockpit window, the city skyline looms in the distance. Jamal can feel the plane beginning to descend. The tension, thick as it is, starts to shift. The passengers, who had been holding their breath, now begin to stir, murmuring amongst themselves. There are glances of disbelief, of confusion, but also of something else, something like awe. Mark, the man who started it all, watches from the back of the plane, his face pale. He no longer looks smug. He no longer looks certain. His entire body seems to shrink under the weight of what has just unfolded. Jamal turns back to him, locking eyes with Mark for the first time since the insult. It's not with anger, not with spite. It's with a quiet strength, a look that speaks of resilience, of perseverance. "Next time," Jamal says softly, "remember who you're talking to." He turns back to the cockpit, focusing on the path ahead. The plane is no longer just a vehicle, it's a symbol of his journey, of every battle he's fought in silence, every obstacle he's overcome. And as the plane begins its descent, the passengers are left to wonder how the man they humiliated just minutes before now stands in control of the entire flight. The laughter from Mark's remark lingers in the air like a foul scent, clinging to the cabin. Jamal's grip tightens around the armrests, his knuckles white. His gaze hardens, but he doesn't speak. Instead, he forces his attention forward, looking past Mark, focusing on the flight attendants, who are now moving through the aisles with clipped precision. They avoid eye contact, but the tension in the air is palpable. Jamal has spent years fighting this feeling, the constant need to prove himself, the weight of being seen as less than. It's an exhaustion that wears at his soul, yet somehow fuels his determination. He's worked his way up from nothing, a self-made entrepreneur with his own tech startup. He's been everything they said he couldn't be. Yet in this moment, all his accomplishments feel distant, like a dream he's desperately trying to hold on to. Mark's voice breaks through his thoughts again, louder this time. "What's your name, man?" he calls out, a sneer in his tone. "Or should I just call you extra baggage?" A few people glance over, uncomfortable but unsure whether to intervene. The flight attendants continue their work, but their eyes flicker toward the scene. Jamal's heart races, but he forces himself to remain calm, steady. He's been here before, many times, each time feeling the sting of disrespect, but never reacting in the way people expect. Jamal takes a deep breath, looking down at his hands. His fingers flex, trying to steady himself. Then slowly, his eyes flick back to Mark. This time, there's no mistaking the fire in them. He's not afraid. "What did you say?" Jamal asks, his voice even, controlled. Mark, thinking this is his moment to assert his dominance, laughs. "I said extra baggage. You know, the kind that doesn't belong here. But I guess you'd understand that, wouldn't you?" The cabin falls silent. The other passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats, eyes darting between Jamal and Mark. A few of them glance at the flight attendants, waiting for them to step in, but none of them move. Jamal stands up slowly, his body stiff but purposeful. He doesn't shout. He doesn't argue. Instead, he walks down the aisle, heading toward the cockpit. His every step is deliberate, his back straight, his jaw set with quiet strength. "Excuse me, sir, where are you going?" One of the flight attendants finally speaks up, her voice uncertain. Jamal doesn't answer at first. He just keeps walking, his gaze locked on the cockpit door ahead. Mark watches him go, his cocky expression shifting into something uncertain, unsure of how to react. The other passengers look on, some with intrigue, others with confusion, unsure of what Jamal is about to do. Reaching the cockpit door, Jamal stops. He turns to the flight attendant standing nearby. "I need to speak with the captain," he says, his voice calm but firm. The flight attendant hesitates, then nods, pressing a button to signal the cockpit. A moment later, the captain's voice crackles through the intercom, but this time Jamal doesn't wait for the formalities. The door swings open. Inside, the captain, a middle-aged man with a neatly trimmed beard, is adjusting his controls. He looks up in surprise as Jamal steps in. For a second, the captain's eyes widen, as though uncertain how to handle the situation. "I need to take control of this flight," Jamal says, his tone unyielding. The captain blinks, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" he asks, clearly trying to gauge the situation. "I'm not just a passenger," Jamal replies, his words cutting through the confusion. "I'm the one who's been carrying this weight every day of my life. And now, I'm taking control." The captain opens his mouth to speak, but Jamal raises his hand, his voice steady, yet full of authority. "I'm sorry, but I'm the one who will land this plane. It's time for you to step aside." The plane touches down, its wheels scraping softly against the runway, a smooth yet deliberate descent that mirrors Jamal's calm and determined rise. As the cabin belt sign blinks off, there's a hushed stillness. No one speaks. Passengers slowly rise from their seats, gathering their belongings in silence, unsure of how to process what they've just witnessed. Jamal remains seated, his eyes focused ahead. He doesn't need applause, he doesn't need recognition. The victory, the true triumph, is in the quiet. It's in the moment when he takes back control of his narrative, when he steps beyond the shadows of prejudice that have defined too much of his life. As he exits the plane, the flight attendants exchange glances, still processing the shift in power that has just unfolded before them. They saw him not as the man who deserved to be humiliated, but as someone who commanded respect. The captain, who had once resisted, now nods to Jamal as he passes, his posture no longer one of authority, but of something far more important, acknowledgement. Outside, as the passengers file off the plane, there's a subtle shift in the air. Mark, still pale, hesitates, and for the first time, he doesn't speak. His words from earlier, those cruel jabs, linger in his throat, swallowed by the reality of what Jamal just proved. Jamal stops for a moment, his bag slung over his shoulder, and turns back toward the terminal. His eyes scan the crowd, and in that brief moment, the weight of what he's done settles over him. This wasn't just about the flight. This wasn't just about a single moment of humiliation. It was a declaration, a reminder that no one, no matter their skin color or background, is less than anyone else. The world may have been set on its course, but Jamal proved that even the smallest of steps could cause a ripple, one that would shift everything. As he walks through the terminal, the people who had once looked at him with derision now avoid his gaze. But it's not the avoidance of guilt or shame. It's the avoidance of respect. Because in that moment, they all understood that Jamal was not someone to be dismissed. He was someone to be reckoned with. Jamal reaches the exit, stepping into the cool air, his feet firm on the ground. He may not have changed the world, but he's made sure that one part of it, his part, will never be defined by the prejudices of others again. With a deep breath, he looks up at the sky. For the first time in a long time, it feels wide open, and as the sound of the airport fades behind him, he knows that he's not just walking away from the flight. He's walking towards something bigger, something unstoppable.